So it appears as though the Chris Eubank Jr., Renold Quinlan IBO super middleweight world title fight will be going ahead. The rumors of ITV pulling out seem to be unfounded. What I will say is Renold Quinlan himself did kind of add a lot of fuel to the fire, because he did a video where he was saying that he's not actually going to fight unless he receives, I think, 6 figures. And prior to that, I believe he was only supposed to be getting 5 figures. So he did this video saying he's not going to fight unless he's getting 6 figures. He also, according to several mainstream news outlets in the UK, said that he didn't believe the show was going to go ahead because the promotion very close to the actual fight happening was seriously lacking. So he was actually threatening to pull out. This is what Renold Quinlan was actually saying. He's been quoted as saying that in the mainstream press, and plus he did that video. So perhaps that was the source of people believing that the show was going to get pulled by ITV. I don't know. There were some people running around saying that Renold Quinlan had confirmed that the show was off, but that was never the case. And I had to correct a few people who did say that online. No, Quinlan certainly did not on his Twitter account or anywhere else confirm that the show was off. He suggested that it might get pulled, but he never said that it was definitely off. Anyway, as far as the show itself, details have now come out. ITV have now started advertising it. Tickets have gone on sale. The cost of the pay-per-view will be $12.95. Now that is cheaper than the average Sky pay-per-view. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Sky box office pay-per-views are normally more expensive than that. I can't remember a pay-per-view as cheap as this for quite a while. I know back in the days in the 90s, the pay-per-views were around this kind of price, a lot of them. But of late, I can't remember a pay-per-view that cheap. So it's the first pay-per-view ITV have had, so maybe they're experimenting a little bit when it comes to the cost of their pay-per-views. The card is actually not a bad card. Is it pay-per-view worthy? Absolutely not, in my opinion. But it's not a bad card. If you put that card on as a standalone card, free-to-air card on ITV, nobody would complain. Everybody would say actually, that's all right for a free show. That's decent. Even if it was a Saturday night fight night on Sky, people would say, yeah, that's a decent enough show. I'll tune in to watch that. So top of the bill, you got Eubank versus Quinlan. You've got David Price on the undercard fighting Christian Hammer. I think that's quite an interesting matchup, and I think that's a bit of a coup by the Eubanks to get David Price on there, because Eddie Hearn has been desperately trying to get David Price on one of his shows again. Obviously, he's fought on Hearn's shows numerous times, but he's been desperate to get Price on one of his shows again, and he's been suggesting Price fight extremely tough opposition. If you remember earlier in 2016, maybe mid 2016, third quarter of 2016, Eddie Hearn was talking about David Price fighting Joseph Parker, which would have been a very dangerous fight for him. Then he was talking about David Price maybe fighting Dylan White. Then he was talking about David Price fighting Luis Ortiz. So Eddie Hearn is trying to match David Price extremely tough. Obviously, he is not the promoter of Price. Price is promoted by Sauerland, who Eddie Hearn works closely with quite often. But he was certainly not allowing David Price to get on one of his shows and take on anybody who didn't have a seriously good chance of beating him. Some people may agree with that, but other people who believe David Price is in the rebuilding process think that's a bit cynical of Eddie Hearn to do that. Now, Christian Hammer is a guy who lost to Tyson Fury. He was stopped by Fury. I believe that was it Fury's final fight before he fought Klitschko? I think it was. Or was it his final fight before he fought Chisora? Maybe it was before. My mind has gone blank here, but yeah, it was a couple of years ago now. Since then, Hammer has bounced back, and Hammer also earlier in his career was knocked out cold. I think it was out cold. I did see the fight by Marius Wack. But since those 2 defeats, he's bounced back, and he had a win recently over Erkan Tepa. And that's what makes this fight interesting to me because Price obviously got knocked out by Tepper. Hammer's just beaten Tepper. So maybe Price likes it because if he defeats Hammer, then he may feel as though he's defeated Tepper in a roundabout way. I know that those kind of triangle situations don't work. Those circular triangle situations don't work in boxing, where just because this guy beat that guy and that guy beat this guy, it doesn't mean that one particular fighter is better than the others. You all have to fight each other, basically. I'm not explaining myself very well here, but hopefully you get my point. If Price beats Hammer, that don't mean he can beat Tepper. Yeah, necessarily. So yeah, that's an interesting choice of opponent, and I really do think that's a coup for the Eubanks to get David Price on the card, because David Price does have a good fan base. As much as people ridicule him and what have you, getting a big heavyweight like David Price on the card on ITV with his big fan base, the fight's going to be in London, but if Price don't sell a lot of tickets in terms of people who are going to attend the show physically, he may be able to sell some pay-per-views or help sell some pay-per-views, particularly when it's only $12.95. So yeah, that's a good addition. David Price versus Christian Hammer. I do expect David Price to win that fight, by the way. Who else is on the card? You've got Kid Galahad. And Kid Galahad is a good fighter. He's not fighting anybody particularly tough, as far as I'm aware, but he is somewhat of a name in British boxing. So again, to have him on the card, that's also pretty good. And then you've got a really good domestic middleweight clash between John Ryder and Adam Etches. Again, that's a bit of a coup for the Eubanks. That's a good domestic scrap to have on there. So just again to reiterate, it's $12.95 for the show. There had been some talk about the undercard being free to air. Now, if anybody's got information on that, please drop it in the comment section below, because I can't find any clarification. Perhaps they were toying with the idea of putting it free to air, but have decided against it. I don't know. But yeah, that's what I've heard, that some people are saying the undercard is going to be free to air, but the articles I'm reading don't mention anything about that. They just say that it's all going to be pay-per-view. So let me know what you think about it all in the comment section below, people. Are you actually going to buy this pay-per-view? Is there anybody out there that's going to buy it for $12.95? Put in the likes of David Price on there, John Ryder, Adam Etches, both, particularly John Ryder. I know he's got a decent fan base. Adam Etches, I'm not so sure about, but putting those kind of guys on there, that will help drive pay-per-view. Definitely. I'm telling you. Obviously, domestically. Again, I'm not defending the pay-per-view. I certainly don't think this is pay-per-view fair at all. But as cards go, just forget the pay-per-view. It's a decent card. It's a decent domestic level card. So yeah, let me know what you think about it, people. Drop it all in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about the fights. Who do you think are going to win these fights? Eubank Jr. or Quinlan? David Price or Christian Hammer? John Ryder or Adam Etches? And Kid Galahad, I think he's just fighting some fairly nondescript opposition. There may be more people added to the card before it goes ahead. We'll see. To be honest with you, this might not turn out to be the car crash that Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren are not only predicting, but hoping for. And if this does turn out to be a success for the Eubanks, it really would be a big coup for them, because I know that there is a promotional company which is co-promoting this with the Eubanks called Poxton. The Eubanks, at the end of the day, don't have the experience that the likes of a Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn or Barry Hearn would have putting on shows. So I guess they need some assistance from this Poxton individual or promotion company. But moving forward, I would imagine if this is a success, the Eubanks are going to try and learn the ropes and then get rid of Poxton in the long run. That's what I think they're going to try and do if this is a success. I was watching a Boxing Beats and Rhymes video where he was talking about this show, and he said that he's going to buy the pay-per-view. He said that he wants to support ITV because he thinks ITV are going to put on a lot of free shows. It's not just going to be all pay-per-view. And I get that, But at the same time, if this is the level of card which qualifies for ITV pay-per-view, I don't think that's a good sign. You know, this is a decent card, but this is not pay-per-view fair at all. So if this is the standard, then anything remotely above British title level may be considered for pay-per-view by ITV. I'm glad and happy that ITV are back in the game, but not with this pay-per-view business. Think about it. They put fights on ITV in the past 15 years, whatever it is, 10, 15 years, like Carl Frampton fighting whoever he fought when Carl Frampton was a world champion. That was free. They also put on Carl Froch versus Jean Pascal. I remember watching that fight live. Now, these are the levels of fights that they've put on ITV in the past 10 years or so, which were free. And now they're going to put on, and they were decent cards, and now they're going to put on Eubank Quinlan and make you pay for it? Is this the shape of things to come? Is this the standard that ITV require? Is it such a low standard they require for their pay-per-views? Not a good sign. So if they do end up putting on a lot of free shows, I would question the quality of those shows. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe this is pay-per-view not because of the quality of the show. Maybe it's pay-per-view because of the Eubank name. Maybe that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the Eubank brand name. It's like designer clothes. You could find something as well made as a Louis Vuitton or a Versace shirt for a lot less money, but the brand name isn't as well known or whatever, you know? So maybe that's what we're paying for. Well, I won't be buying it, but those people who are buying it, maybe that's what they're paying for, is the brand name Eubank, not so much the actual quality of the fights. So yeah, anyway, let me stop waffling. Drop your comments in the comment section below. It's your boy Hatman, I'm out.